Chapter 21. Thursday, 8:15 a.m. Russian olives. Sunlight was shining through my closed eyelids when I awoke. I kept them closed as I tried to remember where I was. Then I heard the distinctive crack of a golf ball hit off of a tee, and it came back, or at least the last 3 days did. The last part of the previous night was fuzzy. I opened my eyes, slowly turning my head to the small sounds someone made at the patio table. Stifling a groan, I closed them again. "I know you're awake, Paul. Daylight's burning," Ms. Ratchet said. "What are you doing?" "Well, hon, I'm writing you a few tickets. Not sure you haven't set a record, son. I'll be finished in a few. Maybe you should go inside, wash your face, and get a cup of Java. You can drink it while I line you out on what you need to start today. It's Thursday." I lifted myself from the lounger and glared at her through the fog of a pounding headache. "Thought you needed my ID to write the ticket." Ms. Ratchet smiled and held up yellow pieces of paper. "Tickets, son, tickets. I couldn't give you that warning because of the complaints we had last night and this morning. You and your boss got a little loud. Remember, you are not a resident. You're the help. Now, this is your driver's license. Picture was taken before your accident. Paul Fred Harding, St. Louis. And this is your company credit card. Wish I could just let you pay your fines with it, but rules are rules. Oh, and she left you a set of keys for the house and the work truck in the garage." The St. Louis driving license read Paul Fred Harding. Riley's bosses were telling me game on. Witnesses go back to their real names, but not while they are in witness protection. The feds were backing my play with terrifying finality. "Paul, are you listening to me?" "No," I said as I walked past her. She was waiting for me in the kitchen with a cup of coffee after I showered and got into my last clean clothes. "You don't look the type," she said. "What type is that?" "The kind that showers before work," she said, and grabbed the hand not holding the coffee cup. Holding my wrist with one hand and looking into my eyes, she rubbed her fingers over my palm. It occurred to me to pour coffee over her head. With animalistic instinct, she released my hand and patted me on the shoulder. "You're a working man, all right. Didn't get those calluses working at a desk. And only men of a certain type leave their wounds to show. And God knows you needed a shower," she said. "This is something else your HOA requires? A hand job?" Excuse me, I meant hand check." She tilted her head back and appraised me. "No, it's just a habit we have back home. You'd be surprised how often people pretend to be something they aren't. Some other time I may have to think about the hand check. Right now, you need to get to work, and I have things to do. Before mowing that lawn, I need to show you the job your boss agreed to." I suppressed a shudder and asked, "Which boss?" "Your lady boss, Ms. Dearborn, dropped by and left everything on the table for you. I caught her on the way out. I don't think she approved of you and her old man partying it up last night any more than our residents did. Told her I had to give you some tickets, and she suggested I write as many as I want and shove all of them up your ass. I swear I've known her before. I definitely like her. You might tell her that. Come on, as I said, I have things to do. I left you some reading material on the table over there. Boy, there are 2 ways to learn the rules. Break 'em and get tickets, or read. Be a lot cheaper for you to read. I assume you can read." Ms. Ratchet walked out the patio door without looking back, confident I would follow, which I did after refilling my coffee cup. She was waiting by a long grove of tightly packed trees in the backyard that separated the castle from the old guest house. I had guessed right when I looked at that dense grove on a satellite image. She pointed to the grove. "Those are list B noxious weeds. They look like Russian olive trees." "Why are you calling them a weed?" I asked. On the high plains desert where I was raised, there were a lot of woods and damn few trees. "Elaeagnus angustifolia is not native to here. Unlike the populous section, Aegiros," she replied. I had a feeling this was her way of seeing if I had calluses in my brain. Biting off that she also was a noxious non-native, I said. "That may be, but at least they don't drop cotton all over the damn place, and limbs don't drop off every time it snows. Had a friend that damn near got killed when a big cottonwood tree branch fell on him while he was shoveling snow." She nodded and said, "Shit happens, son. Shit happens. These are weeds. They look like weeds. They spread like weeds. They suck up water like weeds. And we want to get rid of all of them, starting right now." "Yeah, I can see how water conservation is a big deal to you folks," I said, looking pointedly out at the lush fairways and immaculate greens. She glanced at me, and I kicked myself. What part of sticking to yard boy did I not understand? You don't care much for a woman giving you orders, do you? She asked. I eyed her as carefully as I would a Crotalus cerastus, the sidewinder rattlesnake, and said nothing. I was a yard boy with survival instincts. She grinned and said, just like all the men in my family. Act like they don't like it and damn well won't take it, but they do. Know why? Never mind, boy. You'll find out if you don't do what I tell you. Now, I talked to your boss, and she approved. Said something about it being good for you. I want you to cut the main branches into firewood and make a new stack over there next to the seasoned wood. She motioned to a large stack of firewood on the other side of the yard. I jerked a thumb at the castle and its multiple chimneys. Don't tell me they still heat the place with wood. Oh, hell no. Not even allowed in this stupid state. No, that's my place over there, and we use the wood for our outdoor fire pits. And keep it stacked on Driscoll's side? Yep, she replied tersely. I groaned inwardly and told my mouth to zip it before I got the boot from the estate, or a ticket for asking questions. As we walked along the grove of soon-to-be firewood, I heard singing on the other side of the trees and stopped. It was a little kid singing a song about donkeys and laughing. I remembered the playhouse. Ms. Ratched rolled her eyes. That's the little chink brat. Not saying there's anything wrong with him. I like Chinese food, and we need dry cleaning. Well, you, not so much. But they don't belong in Cottonwood, just like you don't fit in as outdoor help. We generally discourage white boys, in point of fact, white help of any kind. The only reason that we're looking the other way is that you are live-in help. That's the exception. Live-in help has to be white. Get my drift? I smiled at her. I got her drift. Remembered the sheaf of tickets she had shown me, and the fact that I could end up on their chain gang. I was pretty sure Riley would consider it a form of protective custody. I needed to stay loose long enough to prepare my trap for Nicky and lure him in. Seeing the concern written on one side of my face, Ms. Ratched gave my arm a little punch and said, Thought you would. I know you need this job. Do what I tell you to do, and I'll take care of everything else. Might even hold on to those tickets for a while longer. Like I said, that's a lot of tickets. May even be a record. You don't want to spend your day picking up dog shit in your nights in the basement of our little police station, do you? I shook my head no and said I reckoned I had a job to do. We continued to walk along the grove as Ms. Ratched explained how to remove a weed tree in excruciating detail. When we passed by a small gap in the grove, I saw a little girl dancing, carrying a doll almost as big as her. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the other side, either her mother or non-live-in help. Hello, Becky, she said in a pleasant voice. Why, hello, dear. How are you? Isn't she just a darling? Ms. Ratched replied with a smile and nodded at the little girl. The woman turned to look at her daughter, who, realizing she now had an audience, cranked up the volume. Occasionally, she said in a dry voice. She still missing her daddy? Ms. Ratched asked in a sad voice. She misses the idea of him. He died right before her first birthday, remember? You sent roses and an apology for missing the funeral. Mandy and I got a lot of roses from our neighbors. Thanks for asking. The woman looked away, obviously gathering herself. She was slender, medium height, her dark black hair tied in a ponytail. She had a pretty face that looked like it wanted to laugh rather than grieve. I walked away when her dark eyes glanced at me. She said, What brings you over here, Becky? I'm showing Paul his first project. Paul, come back here, son. This is Adeline Hall. Adeline, this young man is Paul. He's the man Driscoll has hired to live in the old house and take care of it. Adeline smiled at me, and I kept my face straight, not wanting to leer at her across the branches and leaves. Her smile tightened as she slid her eyes back to Ms. Ratched. What project is that, Becky? Well, dear, we are removing these weeds from the property. You know they are illegal in this state. Remember me explaining it to you? Adeline's smile vanished, her black eyes boring into Becky. Yes, Becky, and I've explained to the board that these are not your trees. They're mine on my property. If Henry wants to cut them down, he needs to talk to me. Look, dear, I talked to Henry last night, and he assured me that these are his weeds and not yours. Why would he be talking to you about these trees and not me? I had a better question. How was Ms. Ratched talking to Henry Driscoll, whom the FBI could not locate? My guess? Ms. Ratched was lying her ass off. Ms. Ratched, sticking with her story, said, Because I called him to discuss the problem that I and the HOA are having with these trees spreading. Not only to my yard, but over the entire neighborhood and golf course. I'm sorry, but that is just not acceptable. You can put some nice bushes on your side after we're finished. I believe that our covenants require you to do so." Embarrassed, I studied the trees, the yard, and the fairway. I needed to keep my head down long enough to keep my promise to Gabriella. When I looked back at the young mother on the wrong side of the thorns, I told myself to listen to myself. From the look on Adeline's face, I think she forgot I was standing there. She looked through the thorns at Becky, Ms. Ratched, the way a big cat in a zoo looks at the people taunting it. "Yes, Becky, perhaps I could do that, except you continue to give tickets to the people I hire, which means that it would be an incredible amount of work I have to do myself. You know how expensive that would be. There are other Russian olives in the neighborhood. Is everyone removing them?" Ms. Ratched smiled sweetly. "Eventually, yes, but we are starting with the largest infestation on Mr. Driscoll's property." "So you keep saying. I assume he will replace this infestation, as you call it, with a tall hedge of some sort?" "Becky, we've discussed this before. These trees are all that keep golf balls from that tee box flying into our yard. Mandy could get seriously hurt." Adeline winced as her voice broke. Ms. Ratched tutted, unable to keep the smugness from her voice. "Yes, you should have thought of that when you bought a house on a golf course." "We did think of it. Look at all the goddamn golf balls under those trees. Look where we put the playhouse." "Sure, occasionally one rolls out or falls out on our side. When we bought this house, we were told that when they extended the golf course, this kind of tree was packed in here to protect the backyard. And it works. It's not right to try to make me take it out. And when Henry was living here, he never said a word about these trees." I straightened when Ms. Ratched tapped me hard on the back. Adeline was right. There were enough golf balls under the trees to start a driving range. "Yes, so you say. Unfortunately, you don't seem to have it in writing, and even if you did, these are Class B noxious weeds. What to do when we, not you, take them out is between Mr. Driscoll and you. You should be grateful he is paying to remove them. Otherwise, the HOA would have to do it and add it to your bill. A bill that is growing, I might add. Oh, hello, dear. Don't you look like a perfect Oriental doll? And what's your name?" Ms. Ratched spoke to the little girl who had appeared beside Adeline and was staring at me. Her little mouth pursed, her eyes curious. Adeline said, her voice low and tight, "Her name is Mandy, and before you ask, she's almost 4. Can you send me Mr. Driscoll's phone number?" Ms. Ratched's eyebrows raised in surprise. 4? And she can't talk yet in English. "I'm sorry if I upset you. You are both so cute. The HOA cannot give out homeowners' phone numbers or email addresses, but I will tell him to call you the next time I talk to him. I have to finish giving Paul some instructions, and I'm already late for brunch at the clubhouse. Someday I'll have to ask you to join us as a guest. Bye-bye." Ms. Ratched waved at the little girl and motioned me to follow her. I nodded goodbye to Adeline, who quickly looked away, tears running down her cheeks. Back on the patio, Ms. Ratched had the satisfied smile of someone who had just completed a job well done. Her husband was an idiot. He believed they would be accepted into the club for some reason, as if being a doctor mattered. That was never going to happen. Then the fool went out to New York City to help with the Kung flu. You didn't see any of the other doctors living here do anything that stupid. Anyway, her husband, Edmund, the little monkey didn't like being called Ed, went off to be a hero, and she never saw him again. Now all she does is whine about being a single working mother who can't afford to live here. "Why does she stay here? Gotta be an expensive place to live," I asked. She snorted in amusement, her eyes glinting like polished marbles. "Can't sell, at least not yet. That house, like this one, is a historic home. Everything you do has to be approved by the Littleton historical folks, and she would have to disclose some dog-ugly legal problems to any buyers. Not many people want to take that on. Then there is the little problem of liens piling up on her from the HOA. There's a reason folks pay the big bucks to live here, and having her strut around doesn't help property values one damn bit. Got to admit, the one thing those damn weeds are good at is blocking golf balls. Once she's gone, we'll have to put something else in." "She could declare bankruptcy," I said. Ms. Ratched studied me before answering. "Paul, you look like a nice man from the right part of the woods, and I admit that she is a pretty little thing, and boys will be boys. However, when you read the rules over there on the table, you'll find that we have strict guidelines about the help associating with the homeowners. Nothing personal, it just works better if everyone stays in their lane. Now, I grant you that those rules were not meant for a white man, but they apply to you anyway, so stay away from her. You would be stepping into HOA and cottonwood business that is way over your head. We clear on that? Sure, no problem. Good. Now, I don't want a lot of sawing to go on while I'm home. I'll email you a schedule for when you can work on those trees. To do that kind of work, you need an exception. Care to guess who hands those out? You'd better get to work. Have a nice day. And don't forget, this is your day to mow, and no power tools after 3 o'clock without permission. She paused and looked around the yard, her eyes stopping at a pile of split wood at the far corner. Tell you what, I have a little job for you to do first. Won't take a sec, she said, as she walked towards the woodpile. It said something about Ms. Ratched. She didn't even glance over her shoulder to see if I was following her. It also said something I didn't like about me. I followed her. I told myself, just get through this until the place was ready for Nikki to visit. Then, one way or another, it was all over. Not for the young mother next door, a voice in my head said. I paused, turned my head, and whispered, mind your own business. Then I quick-stepped to catch up with Ms. Ratched. She marched forward like a general leading troops to battle. Reaching the woodpile, I had to give it to her. This woman had it all figured out. By keeping her woodpile on Driscoll's side of the fence, she didn't need to keep it neat or even in sight. I peeked over the fence at Ratched's lawn and saw it was perfectly maintained, with everything in almost military order. There was no evidence of any native grasses, shrubs, or trees. Not surprised, I began restacking the wood. I glanced at a freshly shedded snakeskin and decided it came from a large bull snake. I wished the big guy luck. Bull snakes aren't too well liked for something that does a lot of good. Ms. Ratched walked through a gate and up to her house without another word. By the standards of the woodpiles where I grew up, woodpiles used to heat homes. This one was small. I finished straightening it up in short order. Then I walked back to the kitchen and into the house for more coffee. I never drank beer when I worked, especially with power tools. Back on the patio, I ate toast, sipped my coffee, and listened to the entitled hit golf balls off the tee. Once I thought I heard a ball hit the Russian olives. I listened long and carefully. Mandy had stopped singing. I found an old riding mower in one of the garage bays. It was stuck back in a corner next to rusty shovels, rakes, and hoses, so old they cracked when I moved them to the side. The old mower hadn't been used in years, and, without a complete overhaul, would never be used again. When I searched for tools, I found an impressive assortment of tool hangers on a pegboard. Perhaps the HOA confiscated them for hanging crooked or being in the wrong order. The work truck should have been an old, rusted-out pickup. I wiped the dust off the side window and looked inside. I grew up in work pickups and did not remember one with soft leather upholstery or a sound system loaded with tech. I headed back to the patio for my driver's license, so I could go on what would probably be my last shopping trip. The driver's license photo, taken when both sides of my face matched, said I was Paul Fred Harding. The company card was United Home Service. The electronic key to the truck was on a separate ring. Life, even at its end, is funny. After everything I had been through, the luxury truck of my dreams came close to sending me on to a different path. Inside a mansion, seated at the counter in a kitchen big enough to hold 2 luxury trucks, I debated loading up my computers, disabling the factory tracking, any federal GPS trackers, and taking off. After all, there was no chance in hell I was going to get Nikki. And this was not only a truck to die for, it was a truck to die in. Of course, the problem was Gabriella. She loved homes for the rich and famous, like I loved pickups with fancy tailgates. So I wasn't surprised to find myself in front of a hardware store. I sighed and said, Gabriella, I think you're here. If so, do we really need to make that place our eternity? Out of the corner of my eye, she appeared in the passenger side window, but I was past caring, and I knew she wouldn't answer. She never said anything. I almost slammed the truck door on her as I got out, but the truck hadn't done anything to deserve it. I went inside the store and chose only the best tools as I tried to relieve my anger by adding to the federal deficit. An old guy in the tool section told me where to get parts for the mower. It was a place that had survived for decades because it carried things not found in the big box stores or franchise hardware stores. A kid in that store told me where the best electronics warehouse was across town. At the electronics store, I browsed for over an hour and bought what I needed for my Home Alone plan. I do not know if Gabriella tried again, because I mostly stared straight ahead. My glances to the side or rear view mirror instinctual and brief. I avoided accidents because the truck was smart enough to watch out for both of us, and too large for most of the other drivers to ignore. Feeling smugly satisfied, I stopped off at one of the small restaurants in Old Littleton on the other side of the river from Cottonwood. I picked the one with complicated spicy hamburgers, curly sweet potato fries, fried pickles, and draft ale. Afterward, I walked around the small downtown and worked my way to the river, taking photographs with my new camera. I wanted to determine where someone might park himself or place cameras to stake out the castle. Standing on the bike path, I looked at the mansion and imagined the route I would take to get there undetected. Realizing that I had no idea how ex-Special Forces would see things, I gave up and drove my dream machine back to the mansion. I was tearing down the old mower that afternoon when I heard someone enter the garage. Disgusted for leaving the garage door open and working with my back to an open door, I slowly turned. Breathing out a sigh of relief laced with despair, I resumed working on removing a rusted nut. "Are you trying to set a record for tickets, boy?" Ms. Ratchet asked sweetly. "Becky, not sure how you expect me to mow the lawn with a mower that probably hasn't run in 20 years. And I can't fire it up to test it and tune it because it's past the time to use power tools. I'll probably spend all day tomorrow getting this old piece of shit running. So there's another ticket. But you gotta do what you gotta do." I stood up and turned to face her. "Here's an idea. How about I keep my thoughts about any conversations you and Driscoll may or may not have had? I wouldn't want my bosses to start worrying about someone suing them for trespass and vandalism. You don't want me to wait until things get sorted out to start cutting the weeds. With me so far?" It was a calculated risk. Ratchet's tickets could get me kicked out. On the other hand, if I didn't get things straight with his termagant, I could easily see myself dying in the local stir. Her brow furrowed, and I stiffened when she reached inside the large bag she carried over one arm. Rather than pulling out a mini submachine gun, she extracted a tablet almost as large as my laptop. "If that is the way you want it, Paul, let's set up a schedule." Let's not. Look, I have no problem with cutting down all of the trees. Hell, I'll even toss branches too small to burn over onto her lawn and let the bitch figure it out. But where I come from, there's a limit to how much crap a man will take from a woman." Her eyes narrowed to slits, and the muscles in her jaw twitched. I knew I'd overplayed my hand, but there was nothing to do but play it out. Then her mouth twitched, blossomed into a full smile, and she began to laugh. "Damn, boy, for a moment I thought you might try bitch slapping me. Of course, I'd have to shoot your skinny ass. But you seem like you know how to get the job done. Okay, I'll give you some room." Ms. Ratchet winked, walked away, and stopped at the garage door. "Don't fuck with me, Paul." Notice I didn't say, "Don't fuck me."